Do you have DAZN?
Oh man, you already know.
You got DAZN?
I got it all, baby. I'm the boxing man in the family, man. You should ask Jacob. I mean, we had a fight party for JoJo Diaz.
Oh, you did?
Oh man, you already know.
JoJo
man.
Diaz.
Yeah.
This is probably a good time to bring it up. So since a lot has happened since you were here last year.
Oh, a lot has happened.
You were here with JoJo Diaz in February of last year. And of course, shortly after that, I actually saw you at I didn't get an opportunity to talk to you, but I think you were going to work with Andy Ruiz at StubHub Center.
Right. Yeah, I was
so
there.
We were
exactly.
at StubHub just a few months later.
That's right.
And then, of course, after that, Andy Ruiz got the call as a last-minute replacement to replace Jarrell Miller, who had tested positive, in which he won a world title.
Yeah.
So something that I observed, Andy Ruiz, in the aftermath of winning the unified World Heavyweight Championship, he went on Joe Rogan and gave a shout-out to yours truly, Active Body Recovery, man.
That was wild.
Tell me about that. What was it like to hear your name on Joe Rogan, bro?
Man, very emotional. Very emotional because, as we were talking it earlier, it was one of those things where it was so organic. And I love those, those situations where, you don't have to, force feed someone to say, hey, shout me out. And I didn't even know he shouted me out until one of my other boxing clients hit me up on DM on Instagram. It's like, bro, your name is all over Joe Rogan. I was like, what? I don't even know Joe Rogan. Shout out to Joe Rogan, by the way.
Shout out to Joe Rogan.
But,
in case he's listening here.
Yeah. And, he sent me the video and I was looking and I was like, oh my Lord have mercy. I called my wife right away like, yo, did you see this? She's like, I don't even know who Joe Rogan is. And I was like, dude, our name is on this. And that was, like I said, a very emotional experience because I've been in this game for a very long time, in the recovery game for 13 years. And to get that love and that support was, amazing.
So for those of you who do not know, Eddie, of course, Active Body Recovery. You can follow him on Instagram at Mr. Active Body Recovery.
Yep.
Recovery specialist that incorporates techniques that go all the way back thousands of years BC, as well as some of the most innovative techniques of today in the recovery process. And his clientele includes former and current world champions, including JoJo Diaz, who picked up and was here with you last time they were there in February.
That's right.
And somewhere along the way, you hooked up with Jacob.
He was right around that same time.
That's right.
I was seeing these names getting dropped. Joe Rogan picking this guy up. And then we slide in each other's DMs on Instagram.
Yeah,
like,
man.
Okay. That's how you guys met. You met on Instagram.
Basically, yeah.
Okay. And you guys are now hooked up at, I see you got the shirt on Space B.A.R.
Wellness,
Tell me about Space B.A.R.
Yeah, Space B.A.R is just, it's kind of, things come full circle. We've been in the fitness and the health and wellness space for about 10 years ourselves. And we kind of gone through this journey of, gyms, then nutrition, and then kind of realizing that all has its place, but none of it does anything unless you're focusing on recovery. So trying to get the foundation right, and that's what we do at Space B.A.R is, ice baths, infrared saunas, breathing protocols. Eddie's over there with us as well, and we just we're trying to change the conversation around it. When we're talking about these fighters, we see a glimpse of them in the ring for a few rounds, but everything that they're doing there, whether they get hit and they don't change their game plan because they dealt with that stress, that punch to the face, and they dealt with it, all that shit happens outside of the ring in their camp. And so I think recovery and things that Eddie does is crucial to someone's success ultimately in the ring.
So how do we get into Space B.A.R? Where do we find you guys, man? Do we just make an appointment online, and where are you located?
We're up in Pasadena, California. So yeah, anybody that is in the LA area and wants to book a session either with Eddie or us, come and get it all. Get Eddie, get that ice bath. But yeah, you can find us on the Mind Body app or spacebarwellness.com, or we have an app as well, Space B.A.R Wellness, and book your sessions there. But always, slide into the DM on Space B.A.R Wellness on Instagram too, and start the conversation there.
Yeah, it's not hard to book anything with me anyway. My doors are always open. From
with
athletes
that list of
to
clientele,
whoever.
man.
Yeah, man, and that's the thing. I get a lot of DMs like, oh well, I'm not an athlete. So what? What do you do? I work all day. Damn, that's an athlete to me. You got kids? You're an athlete, bro. You know what I mean? You're a hardworking mom, dad, whoever, cousin. You need that recovery. You're only at your best when you recover, bro. So it's what we're doing together. There's not a lot of places that are doing that. And what Jacob brings, not just to Space B.A.R Wellness or to Active Body Recovery, is just as a human being, you want to sit down and you want to talk to him. It's one of those situations. You know, when we met, it was on a whim. You know, I just said, hey, man, I love your name. Welcome to Pasadena. If you want to work in the future, give me a holler. And that was it. I left it alone. I was doing my own thing. You know, Active Body Recovery was still building.
Yeah.
He hit me up, and I was like, yeah, come down. Saw the space right from the studs. And
yeah, man, it was a mess.
A year later, I mean, you know, we're doing it. You know, it's a steady process. It's a steady grind. But you want to surround yourself with people that not just give you great service. And this is why I like him so much, is that he educates you. And that's what I'm about. I like to educate my clients, because if you're not educated during the process, it's just a regular session. If you're not educated during ice baths, saunas, float therapy, breath work, you know, all those essential things that go along an athlete and or not, you're just going to kind of go in and just kind of do it. You know, we don't want you to do it. We want you to understand why you're doing it.
For sure.
Yeah. It's interesting, you know, I talk about using ancient techniques, and boxing is kind of an ancient culture in the sense that, you know, fighters, a lot of times, you know, they're coming up through gym systems and they're learning from the way their trainers learned, and their trainers learned from their trainers before that. And so there's a lot of things that I would say modern athletes do that are sometimes, depending on how old school you are looked upon as like negatives in boxing. Like, we don't do this, we don't believe in that. You know, we work in the gym and kind of that's where we stay. We don't lift
Meanwhile,
weights.
there's others that are, and that's why you're gonna get smacked.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of There's a lot of kind of you know, a barrier. What would you say in terms of recovery? And this could be for any athlete, but I can see how it would be especially relevant for people who come from that kind of background or culture. What's the biggest misconception about recovery that you find, man, I have to educate these people on this every time they come through the door, right? So this is the number one thing that they need to know about recovery. What is it that they carry in with them that they really should let go?
They don't understand what inflammation really does.
Okay. Can you explain it a little bit?
Yeah. So when being in the boxing world for 6-7 years, you know, I got into it with Dominic Brazil, right?
Yeah.
It's my right hand man. He got me in there with Manny Robles. You know, shout out to Manny Robles. That guy gave me a run for my money in a year and a half because he didn't really understand what I was about. So we're good now.
See what I mean?
Right. So we're good. We're good. You know, I work with Charles Martin. You know, shout out to Charles Martin.
Yeah, shout out to
Gerald,
Charles Martin.
You know, last night. But you know, inflammation, I mean, we have it. It's an ongoing thing. And one of those things where I have to educate these fighters is, what are you doing before? What are you doing in the middle? And what are you doing after your training? And 9 out of 10 people, well, I just go home.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, I stretch for like 5 minutes.
Yep.
What else? So inflammation is huge.
Yeah, and on top of that, like, understanding that inflammation, it serves a purpose, it's necessary. But when you're in camp and you have a deadline that you need to, you know, get in that ring, you need to do something to mitigate that, because ultimately you need to be training day in and day out. And it's chronic inflammation that is going to be the issue. You need to be able to recover so you can get back into the gym and train. So that for sure. And then I think this idea that it's soft. You know, like getting on the table and getting some work done. Oh, that ain't hard.
That's right.
That's not the fighter's mentality. You
That's
know, slowing
right.
down, and it's not only the fighting world. It's our culture in general, our capitalistic society to grind. Where if we slow down, oh, you ain't hustling. You ain't about shit.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been in this grind for a long time ourselves, and we know that in 10 years, if you are not taking care of yourself, what do you got left to put out there? Nothing. You know what I mean? And plus, I mean, the things that we do, that shit's rough. You know, like his massages ain't pleasant. You know, you're being very active.
No, he mentioned that last time, actually.
Yeah, they're not.
When you were here, you had said, you know, as you incorporate all these techniques and stuff, it hurts. Like, it's painful, right? As I imagine ice baths and some of these other things, you know, they don't, you know, they'll wake you up in the morning.
For sure.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
So I'm an athlete, for instance. I'm a boxer, and I'm trying to dip my toe in the water, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is the first thing you would recommend in terms of the types of recovery? Because there's a lot of different things you could do, and I'm sure a lot of services that you guys perform at Space B.A.R, Active Body Recovery. So I'm just looking to understand this a little bit. What's the number one thing where you say, hey, if you really want to understand recovery, start with this, and we'll expand from there?
For me, now that, you know, we do it on a regular, is ice baths.
Okay.
Yeah. That's what I like to start my client with, is let's do an ice bath.
I think people can get, like, even boxers can get into the ice bath. You know what I mean? Like, it's not, that one's probably not so much of a barrier as some of the other techniques and stuff like that.
You'd be surprised though, Sean.
Yeah, maybe.
Because we've had quite a few clients that come in and they're like, oh, ice bath. Oh, okay. I've done that before. And I tell them, well, how cold was it though? They're like, oh, it was only about 40 degrees. I said, oh man, you about to get in here with 33 to 35 degrees of water. It's a different mindset, man. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, well, it's nothing. Okay.
Yeah. And the more we do it, these patterns emerge. You know, the people that talk, the people with the ego, doing that. That's not a big deal. I'm gonna handle that. Yeah. Nah, they're the ones that suffer the most.
Very humbling.
But for me, I think what I want people to realize is when you come in and like, oh, what should I do? This and this and that. We want to be a part of your bigger team as far as like, what are you doing? Like, what's your training? What's your strength and conditioning looking like? Like, if you're in this camp, I mean, all of this stuff is getting left behind in camps. You know, you're going and you're sparring, you're doing whatever, and you're going for these long bouts of endurance cardio. All that shit needs to be rethought. You need to get a strength and conditioning coach on your team. You need to get a recovery specialist on your team, and you need to start taking this shit serious. Whether you're a professional and amateur, there are amateur strength and conditioning coaches out there. There are amateur people who are interested in this recovery stuff. Get a team around you that you can either afford or that wants to ride with you and learn, and then you go out there and you be the warrior that you are. But it needs to be a holistic conversation. For example, with the ice bath. If you have a strength and conditioning coach on your team and tomorrow's a power day, we're not going to put you in the ice bath because it's going to take away from your power output tomorrow if you're, depending on what you're doing in the gym. So those are things that as your recovery coaches or whatever, like we need to all be in the loop, because we all trying to get you to this end game, you know what I mean? So it needs to just be a conversation with everybody involved, really.
It's interesting that you say that because I would say more so even than recovery, probably the area where I've experienced the most divide in the audience who watches the show and consumes this content is the area of strength and conditioning. So I've had strength and conditioning coaches on this show multiple times. Yeah. And I'm more or less an advocate for strength and conditioning. Not more or less. I would say that I am. Although I'm alienating some people by saying that. Because when I bring those people on the show in particular, people are like, why you give these guys the time of day? This isn't, Yeah. So it's a very divided kind of area. And one of the keys that strength and conditioning coaches, at least the ones that I've had on, is one of those same things, which is communication between your full coaching staff. Yeah. And one of the things that I think is interesting about this fight last night that we're talking about, Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. So his corner threw in the towel.
Oh, man. I'm glad you're hopping on this.
Yeah, his corner threw in the towel. At the same time as that was happening, Kenny Bayless, the referee, was also stopping the fight. So there was some conflict within Deontay Wilder about so at first he was mad at Kenny Bayless, like, hey, I'm still here, I'm still fighting. Right. He was still on his feet. And then there was also, though, this idea that his corner is already throwing the towel. We learned after the fact that there was conflict in his corner about throwing in the towel. Deontay Wilder's head coach explained in the post-fight press conference that I am the head coach, but we work differently than your typical boxing team. The way that we work is more like an NFL team. We have an offensive coordinator, a defensive coordinator. So even though I'm the head coach in the corner, I'm not necessarily the guy calling the plays. I'm not the one telling him what to do on offense. So there was some conflict between the head coach and the quote-unquote offensive coordinator. The one who wanted to throw in the towel was the offensive coordinator, and ultimately he's the one who made that decision. And his head coach does not agree, even after the fact, with the decision to proceed in that way, right? So when Ben Lira, we were just talking about Ben Lira, legendary boxing coach, right? Yeah. When Ben Lira was on this program, I said, how many voices are too many? And the general consensus was any voice other than mine is too many,
Absolutely.
Right? It's always my voice that you should hear in the corner, right? Is there a legitimate concern in having too many people or too many hands in the pot, however you want to say it, right? And if there is, where does that stop and where does it start? Like, for instance, you could say there is a concern about that in the corner, but not in terms of like having a nutritionist, having strength and conditioning, having all these things that are important for modern day athletes. Like, what's your feedback on kind of their system of running the corner, as an example?
I mean, well, I come from an old school mindset. I mean, one face, one sound, one name. I mean, come on. I mean, it's one thing to get an understanding as a group, and that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, before the fight, you can't have too many voices throwing things at you. I mean, you know, regardless, me personally, I'm glad they threw in the towel. I'm really happy for Deontay.
I was too.
And his health.
I was
honest
too.
to God. For the head trainer to go up there and kind of low key throw the assistant under the bridge.
Absolutely, that's what he did.
That's pretty bad. You know what I mean?
I don't even think it was low key. I think it was straight up.
Was
he was like,
key.
I didn't agree.
He
threw that towel, and I didn't want him to.
But you know, his argument was because, you know, he still has a puncher's chance.
Yeah.
He didn't. He didn't have a puncher's chance. He wasn't even there. You know, his sweeping left hooks that were tapping him in the forehead was dazing him.
Yeah.
You know, so there should just be one face, one sound in your corner.
Yeah, for sure. Like, too many cooks in the kitchen is definitely going to cause an issue. But when you get through a fight and you have this honest assessment with your team and your fighter about what is needed, you got to get stronger. That head trainer ain't going to do shit to get you stronger. They, you know, talk about one trick ponies. Like you do your thing. You know what I mean? Like there's people that do their thing. So collectively, everybody does need to come together and get a game plan. Like how are you going to get stronger? How are you going to be closer to your weight class without having to drop 30 pounds? You know what I mean? Like how are all these things going to happen in camp? You know, like that. And that's where multiple voices, I think, are necessary, you know, because we all have our strengths and our weaknesses, and we all need to double down on a team to make it happen. Unless you got that guy that can do it all. Yeah. I mean,
what do you think we need to do to change the perspective? Because you look, for instance, at someone like LeBron James, who I'm certain spends millions of dollars annually.
$1.5 million a year on his body.
Is that true?
Exact number.
$1.5 million?
Man, $1.5 million.
I was about to say, I'm certain he spends millions of dollars fine-tuning the specimen that he is to be the type of athlete that he is, doing what he does every night for the last, for as long as I can remember, right? He's been doing it for a really long time. So you look at it and you go, okay, there's obviously no culture conflict there. We have an athlete who's at peak performance and he understands I'm going to invest everything I can in my body, in my person, right? So what are some of the things that we need to do and when I say we, I mean like the boxing community, to shift that perspective or to help people understand that, like, you know, specialists or people who have specialties in terms of recovery or nutrition or strength and conditioning can benefit you? Is it just that as we see more people utilize them, people will, like, is there some kind of talking point that we should make, or do we just need to hope that the community
I think sharing that
into
more, like Fury was showing his massage therapist, his work getting done, you know, and like just having more conversation, and then those cats winning. You know what I mean? And then
let's keep it real. I mean, it's for me personally, and I'm speaking on behalf of myself and no other therapists out there, right? I take my game as if it's a game. My profession is a game. Every day that I get somebody on my table, whether he or she is an athlete or not, I don't care, because my reputation is on the line as much as your body that you're trusting me with is on the line. So that's my way of understanding and getting people to understand, like, I'm not a joke here. Like, I'm not your typical therapist that you could find across the street and or wherever else that you go. So when you open up that box, I think the biggest thing, you just got to listen. People have so hard times of just listening. Just listen to me for a second, instead of jumping the gun and saying, oh, well, I can get this guy to do this and I can get this guy to go that. And I've experienced it in the boxing world. It's like, well, how much do you charge? Yeah. That's 9 out of 10 times.
There's probably a general misconception that I will say this, okay? Many times on this show, you've heard individuals say, and in the media, that boxing is a poor man's sport. And the narrative is that some of these things that you're talking about are a luxury to most fighters. So a nutritionist, strength and conditioning coach, those things are a luxury because they have a cost above and beyond what you need in order to sort of go and execute in the ring. Yeah. Right? So to a certain extent, I can understand the perspective of the cost, but I also think it doesn't hurt to ask around. You know what I mean? Ask people what they're willing to do. You know, ask people. So I understand where the question is coming from. Like, what does it cost? You know what I mean? Like, what's it going to cost for me to have a recovery specialist, strength and conditioning, nutritionists, and all of these specialized skills, or specialized talents around me?
Sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think at a certain level, you'll begin to find that it's going to become commonplace more and more. It kind of just takes time.
I mean, what's it going to cost for you not to? You know, like how much do you believe in yourself and to get to that next level? And again, this isn't coming from a place of like people like us want to support people that we believe in. Yeah. You know what I mean? And a lot of this stuff comes back to, it's like, what kind of person are you? Do you believe in a growth mindset? Do you believe that you have the ability to make decisions on your own, or are you just going to follow what has always been done, Are you willing to put your money on that? Or are you willing to gamble and do something different? It all comes back to educating yourself. You can't deny science. I mean, you know, I mean,
you can actually. Trust me, you
global
can.
warming, what's that?
But I'll show you my Instagram, bro.
But I mean, and the thing is, I think we believe that by maybe focusing on this other area, that something else is going to be taken away. So the people that are arguing against strength and conditioning coaches or whatever it might be, like, what are you afraid is going to get pulled out of it? You know, is the other culture? You know, what's lacking? What's your fear in that? You know what I mean? But just educating yourself and then making a decision based off of what you got, the facts in front of you, and like, okay, I'm going to make this decision because my odds are better now, or not. And that's fine too. But think it through, you know, educate yourself.
You know, I've never asked this question before, but one of the things that you had mentioned earlier was, you know, what we need to do is you need to see more of those people coming in, utilizing those techniques and being successful. Right. And that kind of sparked this question, which was, do you guys feel as though your reputation takes a hit if an athlete who you're servicing is not successful, particularly in boxing? Because it's not like, you know, in the MLB or in basketball where, hey, 2 days from now, they're going to go play again. They may win a game, or they may lose a game, but they may win the NBA championship or whatever the case is. Right. In boxing, at the highest level, when we're talking about servicing world champions, these are people who, if you're Emmanuel Navarrete, you fight 4 times a year. And if you're anybody else, you only fight twice. Right. You know what I mean? So like at the highest level, you're only fighting 2, maybe 3 times annually. So when you have someone who's competing at that level and they take an L, like a knockout loss or something like that, do you take that, does it personally impact your reputation as a recovery specialist or any one of these kind of specialty skills that is surrounding it?
I think I asked you.
Yeah, I mean, I think we had this conversation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And for me, it's two-sided. One, because I would like to say I'm an athlete still, but I don't. But as an athlete that has been playing sports at a high level back in the day, and now looking at these fighters and how much they have to give up, I take it. That's a fear for me. It's a big fear. Because it's easy to point the finger. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
It's very easy to point the finger like, oh, well, you know, Eddie worked on me here, and so that's why I couldn't get that left hook to, you know, open or close a little bit harder or whatever. Yeah. When in reality, it's like it's easy for you to just say that versus let's look at the tape.
Yeah.
You know, so yeah, it's a little bit of a fear for sure.
It's actually, when you think about it, like even coaches, and I'm talking traditional boxing coaches, you look at it, they're the first to go every single time. Someone suffers a loss, right? Like you may have this coach your entire life, you hit your first L and that coach is gone. Yeah. Right. I need to change trainers. Right. So like to some extent, this actually impacts not just, you know, specialists, but it impacts like anybody who's on that team. And in particular, the boxing coach, because the boxing coach, in my perspective, 9 times out of 10, when you're in a hard situation, you have to explain how something went wrong. Coach is gone. Yeah. Right. Like that's true. I'm moving on. I'm moving to another coach.
It's so true. I mean, I had to deal, not I had to deal with it, but I had the opportunity to sit down and learn and hear and see the expressions with Manny Robles.
Yeah. Manny's a great example.
He's a great example. You know, I mean, Dominic left him, and that's fine. You know, he moves on. Andy Ruiz is the unified world champion. He loses. He left him. You know, the biggest thing that I learned from Manny is that, you know, it's nothing personal. It's boxing, you know, and that's the kind of thing that I'm taking from him now. He's like, don't take it personal.
Yeah. I think it depends on your personality type, though, because you look at certain trainers like Abel Sanchez, for instance, and it depends. Triple G, He left Abel Sanchez. That was over a financial dispute,
Right.
presumably, where they're trying to renegotiate the terms of their contract. But at the same time, I would assert that based off of the feedback Abel Sanchez gave in interviews, he took it personally. You know what I mean, right? Like he was like, yeah, man, like this is ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And you know, there was almost like we're almost to the point of like name calling with those kinds of things. So I'm sure in Manny's case, he did seem to be a good sport about it, but at the same time, that one in particular, I think, didn't sit well with a lot of people in the boxing community, just by virtue of the fact that Andy kind of admittedly came out and said, I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't do what I was supposed to do. I didn't take my training seriously, right? And you look and you have, I've been with Manny Robles. I won the Unified World Championship with Manny. I came out, I acknowledge I didn't train the right way. I wasn't even really training with Manny. I was doing it myself, which is a crazy thing to say, I think, in the public. But then still to go and make that change. Because remember, like I said, the coach is he's always the first one to go. Like, even after you acknowledge all that and publicly say, like, you know, man, I messed up. I went and I didn't train the way I should. And still to kind of then go, okay, we're going to part ways with Manny and we're going to go and find someone else. I think that's some of the reason why the aftertaste or the aftermath of that didn't sit as well kind of with the boxing public. But like I said, it's also not uncommon. It happens all the time. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, that sparked that question. Yeah. Before we sign off or anything like that, I also want to make sure you guys give your plugs in terms of where should we follow you on Instagram, on social media, you know, and anything you want to give shout outs, anything like that, you can do it into that camera right there. You want to go for it, Eddie?
Yeah. Where am I pointing?
Right here.
Oh, hey. Well, you can always find me at Mr. Active Body Recovery on Instagram. That's the personal/business. The business one is Active Body Recovery on Instagram. I do post every so often on Facebook, so you can find me on there. You know, shout out to 2019 for me, really. It's been a hell of a year. Shout out to Manny Robles. Legitimately with Manny Robles, because this man has given me the opportunity to work with not just fighters that are coming up, but world-class fighters. So, you know, shout out to Manny Robles. Thank you so much. Shout out to my wife for dealing with all the madness that I do all the time. And obviously my children and, you know, Jacob Space B.A.R. You know, I really appreciate the opportunity that we've been having so far. And the grind is coming, baby. We ready.
Yes, sir.
Jacob, what do you got?
You can find me at a Cub_Saldana, CUB_Saldana, Space B.A.R Wellness on Instagram, all one word. Also Fit Bar Cafe is another one of our businesses that we have there too. So like I said, it's been an evolution. We got you on the nutrition front, on the recovery front. It all needs to be part of that same conversation. Space B.A.R Wellness is located in Pasadena, California at 600 East Colorado Boulevard. Come and see us in person, you know, and as far as like what we can do to make this more accepted, is a lot of it is on us to be more approachable. Like, if you're a fighter and you're taking your shit serious, come and see us. Yeah. You know, first session is always going to be free. Let's just have a conversation and see if we can maybe turn on a light bulb, or you know, maybe we'll just show you that you're doing what you should be doing already and we're not a good fit. But either way, come and holler at us, you know, reach out on Instagram and start the conversation.
Yeah, one last thing. I want to shout you out, bro. Thank you for having me. It's 1 year anniversary,
of course,
man. It means a lot. Seriously, it means a lot to be on here again. You know, my wife was like, "Oh, you're gonna go on again?" I was like, "Yeah, they actually want me back, bro. Can you believe it?"
Of course, man.
She's like, "Don't say nothing stupid." So, but yeah, man,
you made it out. You made it out, man.
So thank you very much, man. Thank you to you know, Stacks as well. You know, I know I met him last year as well, and you know, I look forward to being back again with him here as well.
Absolutely, man. It's our pleasure to have you back. To have you back. So thank you guys very much for today. Of course, you can follow me at Just Boxing Live on Facebook, at Just Boxing Live on Instagram. Follow the YouTube page, Just Boxing, of course. What else? It's all over everything that we've got here.
That's right.
But that's all I've got for you this week. Thank you very much to Eddie Rosario. Thank you, Jacob Saldana. No relation to Anthony Stacks Saldana. And thanks to Stacks, of course, for calling in. We'll be back with you guys again next week. That's all I got for you this week. Peace.
Deuce.